Please don't pull it, the Apache girl begged. The rancher did, and his blood instantly ran cold. The twin suns of the Dust Veil system were sinking behind jagged cliffs, casting the endless red plains in streaks of molten gold in shadow. The horizon seemed to stretch forever, broken only by the skeletal remains of old starships half buried in the dirt and rusting like forgotten bones. On this forsaken edge of the frontier, the Starfall Ranch sat abandoned for decades, its wind-whipped fences sagging and its water tanks dented and leaking. It had been a place of hope once, where the Apache colonists tried to start anew, but now it was a graveyard for memories and warnings. Jace Rowland rode slowly over the cracked soil, his boots kicking up sparks from the friction of metal spurs against the hard red earth. The reins of his hover steed hummed under his grip, the machine's engines almost whispering in the quiet afternoon. Jace was a man of no nonsense, his face weathered and scorched from years under suns far harsher than Earth's. His hands were thick and scarred, shaped by decades of splitting wood, repairing fences, and handling whatever this frontier could throw at him. He had survived dust storms, raiders, and malfunctioning drones. He thought he had seen nearly everything, but the silence pressing against him today carried a warning that made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. A sudden scream tore through the plains, jagged and raw. It was human, young, and desperate. Jace's head snapped toward the sound. From the horizon, he spotted her, a girl, crouched over a glinting object half buried in the red soil. Her clothes were torn and streaked with dust. Dark braids fell over her shoulders, tangled with bits of metal and fragments of shattered technology. She was small, frail-looking, but her eyes burned with an intensity that made him pause. "Please don't pull it," she begged, her voice trembling. Jace's hand instinctively went to the blaster at his belt, though he didn't draw it. Something about the girl made him hesitate. She wasn't a raider, not by the way she trembled, not by the way her eyes darted between him and the object she protected. It was almost as if she were guarding something alive. "What is it, girl?" Jace asked, his voice steady but low. He dismounted, letting the hover steed settle, its engines fading to a soft whine. It's a seed," she whispered, her fingers brushing the cylindrical device with trembling reverence. "A life seed. It's alive. If you pull it wrong, it'll..." Jace's curiosity overcame him. Years in the Dust Veil had taught him that curiosity could be dangerous, but sometimes survival demanded understanding. He stepped closer, inspecting the device. It was smooth chrome, shaped like a cylinder about 2 feet long. Lines of strange, glowing runes ran along its surface, pulsing faintly in rhythm with some internal heartbeat he couldn't hear. Dust and small rocks clung to it, yet it seemed untouched by time in a way that made the hair on his arms stand on end. "I can handle it," Jace said, his voice gruff. The girl's eyes widened in horror. "Don't!" she screamed, reaching out, but he brushed her hands away. He gripped the seed with both hands. It was heavier than he expected, solid yet humming faintly against his palms. With a grunt, he yanked it from the soil. The earth shuddered beneath their feet. A deep, mechanical hum rose from the seed, reverberating in the bones. The air thickened, metallic, with a taste of iron and ozone. Jace's stomach dropped. Something was happening, something alive, something beyond the frontier law of man and machine. He looked down and saw it first as a stain on his gloves. Crimson spread across the dirt, dark and liquid. He recoiled, thinking his hand had been pierced, but there was no wound. The blood was cold, unnatural. It seeped across the soil like living ice. A chill ran down his spine, and instinctively he tried to drop the seed, but the girl's scream stopped him. "You have to keep it steady," she cried. "Don't let it flow. If it spills wrong, it will take." Jace's heart thumped against his ribs, each beat echoing like a drum. His training, his years of frontier survival, offered no guidance. He stared at the seed, pulsing with crimson veins that seemed almost alive, writhing under the chrome surface. It wasn't just a relic. It was something intelligent, aware, and very dangerous. The girl stepped closer, her hands shaking but steady enough to grasp his arm. "I warned you," she said. "It chooses, and you are not ready." Before he could respond, a sharp wind tore across the plains. Dust and grit swirled violently. The twin sun's last light glanced off something moving in the distance. 2 towering figures, gleaming metallic and humanoid, emerged from the horizon. Their shapes were angular, not quite human, yet their movements carried purpose, intelligence. They advanced steadily, reflecting the red and gold light, their steps silent against the dirt. "They came for it," the girl said, her voice low and tense. "The Guardians. They never leave anything behind." "Guardians?" Jace asked, though he already sensed the answer. The frontier had many legends, machines older than any human settlement, created to protect, to punish, to claim. He had thought them stories to scare children. Now he saw them as living nightmares marching toward them, the cold on his skin spread, creeping up his arms and chest, making his limbs feel heavier, slower. It wasn't frost, not in the natural sense. It was a chill that sank into his bones, a warning, a harbinger of the alien intelligence encased in the chrome seed he still held. Every beat of his heart seemed to echo in his ears, a frantic rhythm against the soft hum now roaring from the device. The girl stepped fully in front of him, her small frame trembling but unyielding. "If they get the seed, they won't stop at you," she said. "They'll take everything. They'll hunt everyone in this system." Jace looked at her, then back at the Guardians. He had faced raiders, sandstorms, malfunctioning droids, even rogue AIs, but nothing like this. These machines weren't just weapons. They were predators, designed to retrieve, reclaim, and destroy anything that escaped their control. He tightened his grip on the seed. "Then we need a plan," he said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. He knew survival would depend not on his skill with a blaster or his knowledge of the plains, but on understanding something utterly alien. The Guardians drew closer, their movements precise, mechanical, and terrifyingly patient. The dust swirled around them like a curtain, and the twin suns cast long shadows that danced across the cracked earth. The girl's hand left his arm and went to her belt, revealing a small, ornate pistol that hummed with blue energy. She aimed at the approaching figures, her hands steady despite her age. Jace realized something then. She wasn't just any girl. Her eyes, bright with determination, carried the weight of survival, of secrets older than the dust veil itself. She had been guarding this place, this seed, for reasons he could not yet understand, and now, by pulling it, he had dragged them both into a danger far beyond anything he had faced in his life. A rumble shook the ground. The seed pulsed violently in his hands. The cold that had begun in his fingers now spread through his entire body. His vision blurred at the edges, and for a moment he feared he might freeze solid right where he stood. The girl's voice cut through his panic. "Listen to me."
"You have to run."
"Not away. Toward the cliffs. The seed, it chooses its path." Before he could argue, the nearest Guardian extended a limb, long, spindly, ending in a cluster of blades that gleamed under the suns. The air vibrated with the sound of metal against metal as the seed in Jace's hands reacted. Red light burst from it, washing over the dirt and reflecting off the Guardian's polished surfaces. Jace's blood ran cold. Not from fear, but from the unnatural chill that seemed to consume his very essence. He felt the seed's consciousness brushing against his mind, a whisper, a warning, a plea he could barely comprehend. Something ancient, sentient, and merciless was now awake. And far across the plains, where the horizon touched the suns, more movement shimmered, metallic and ominous. Whatever had been buried in the dust veil for decades was no longer silent. Whatever had been waiting was awake. The girl grabbed his arm again, dragging him forward. "Run, rancher! Don't let it touch you." Jace nodded, barely trusting his own legs. The red plains stretched endlessly, but survival demanded speed, wits, and courage. Behind them, the Guardians advanced with relentless precision. And between him and whatever salvation lay ahead, the seed pulsed violently, alive, aware, and hungry for a path of its own choosing. The frontier had always been dangerous, wild, unforgiving, but nothing had prepared Jace Rowland for the nightmare that had just been unearthed, or for the Apache girl who now led him into it. As the twin suns sank completely below the horizon, the desert's shadows stretched like fingers of doom. Jace could only run, clutching the seed, praying that the future wasn't already written in crimson. The plains of Dust Vale stretched endlessly under the cold night, now only faintly lit by the glow of distant stars and the twin moons that had begun their climb into the darkening sky. Jace Rowland's breath came in ragged gasps, his muscles screaming with every step as he ran across the uneven terrain. The girl, small but fierce, led the way, her pistol humming faint blue energy as she glanced behind them. "The cliffs!" she shouted, pointing to jagged spires rising like broken teeth in the distance. "If we can reach the old Starfall Canyon, the Guardians can't follow as easily. They're fast but not clever." Jace didn't question her. Every instinct he had screamed that she knew far more than she let on. Her eyes, dark and sharp, carried the wisdom of someone who had survived horrors no one else could imagine. And whatever this seed was, it had chosen them. And it was clear now that the Guardians had only one goal: to reclaim it. The metallic giants moved with terrifying precision. Their steps were silent until the dust swirled in the wake of their approach. Jace caught glimpses of their jointed limbs, polished chrome reflecting the red plains like living mirrors. There was no hesitation, no mercy, only purpose. "How do we stop them?" he panted, gripping the seed tightly. Its warmth, or was it cold, pulsed against his hands almost as if it were alive. "You don't. You survive. You follow my lead. And maybe we figure it out together." Her words were tense, but there was no fear in her voice, only focus. It struck Jace that she was no ordinary survivor. She moved with calculated precision, jumping over fissures in the desert floor, ducking under jagged metal spires that jutted from the ground, all while carrying a weight of responsibility that he could feel even from a few steps behind. "Tell me your name," Jace demanded, struggling to keep pace. "I am Naeli," she said, her eyes forward, never slowing. "I've been guarding the seed for years. You just triggered it. Now we run, or we die." Jace's mind tried to process her words. Years? How had a girl survived out here for years? How had she evaded these guardians that were now closing in like a storm? Questions didn't matter. Survival mattered. They ran for what felt like hours. The plains twisted and shifted as if alive, with rusted starship skeletons dotting the horizon like tombstones. Jace noticed the seed in his hands was glowing faintly, pulsing in rhythm with his own heartbeat. Sometimes the light would surge, casting the shadows of the approaching guardians across the terrain. He realized it was reacting to the threat, aware, maybe even intelligent. The first guardian reached out, a long arm ending in a cluster of spinning blades. The ground beneath it trembled as it moved, and Jace could see the faint distortion of air around its limbs, like heat ripples, though the air was cold. Naeli fired her pistol, the blue energy bolt striking the guardian. Sparks erupted, and for a fraction of a second it faltered, but it didn't stop. "They'd barely even notice," Jace muttered, fear creeping into his voice. "They can't," Naeli said, her voice grim. "They're designed to retrieve the seed. Nothing else matters." "Run!" Jace tightened his grip on the seed. The chill that had begun in part 1 now crept through his bones like ice, cold and numbing, yet the seed's warmth, or whatever strange energy it emitted, pulsed against it, almost alive. He felt a whisper brush against his mind. Images of stars, of machines, of endless voids. He shivered, realizing this thing wasn't just a relic. It was a being, and it knew. As they neared the cliffs, a sudden creak echoed behind them. Jace turned to see the guardians adapting, their forms stretching and bending in ways that no human body could manage. One guardian leapt forward with unnatural speed, blades whirring and the ground cracked beneath its feet. Jace and Naeli ducked behind a fallen ship hull, panting, hearts racing. "You need to learn something," Naeli said, pressing a hand against his arm. Her fingers were surprisingly warm, grounding him in the midst of chaos. "The seed, it isn't just alive. It's a choice. Whoever holds it can channel its power, but it doesn't let you decide what it does. Not entirely." "What do you mean, choice?" Jace asked, struggling to catch his breath. "It chooses who can wield it," Naeli said. "And right now it's testing you. That cold you feel?"
That's not your blood, that's it.
"Marking you, seeing if you're worthy, or if you'll be consumed." Jace swallowed hard. Consumed. The word echoed like a death knell in his mind. He had faced raiders, sandstorms, and rogue AIs, but never something that could literally decide to devour him. The Guardians closed in again. Jace could hear the soft hum of their systems in the quiet desert air, like the heartbeat of predators. Naeli fired again, a blur of blue energy bolts that cut across the sand, sparking off the machine's armor but leaving them mostly unscathed. "Follow me!" Naeli shouted, vaulting over a ridge of cracked metal. "There's a cave. Hidden. We can hold them there. For now." Jace followed, leaping over jagged metal and broken stones, the seed pulsing violently in his arms. Every pulse was a warning, a heartbeat, a whisper of some intelligence older than the frontier itself. They reached the cave as the Guardian's footsteps shook the ground around them. It was a narrow opening carved by ancient dust storms and lined with sharp stone edges. Inside, the air was cool and dry, a faint echo of moisture from underground reservoirs long depleted. "Stay back," Naeli said, stepping inside first. She pressed the seed against the wall, and for the first time, Jace noticed a faint energy ripple spreading outward. The Guardians hesitated, as if sensing something they couldn't fully understand. The air around the cave shimmered. "They can't come in here as easily," Naeli said. but it won't last. They adapt quickly. Jace set the seed down, still feeling the chill creeping into his bones. He could hear whispers now, faint and alien, brushing against his mind like silk. Images flashed, vast empty skies, machines moving across planets, civilizations rising and falling. He shivered. They've been hunting this for centuries, Nayeli said. The Apache colonists weren't the first, and we won't be the last if we fail. Jace finally met her gaze. And you've been alone all this time? Nayeli nodded, her face hard. Alone, yes. Guarding, yes. Surviving, always. And now, you. The seed chose you. Whether you like it or not. The cave shook suddenly as the first guardian's limbs scratched at the rock outside. Sparks flew as metal clawed against stone. Jace and Nayeli instinctively moved closer together, both aware that the coming battle would not just be about survival. It would be about control of something far larger than themselves. Jace gripped the seed again, feeling its pulse sync with his heartbeat. He realized in that instant that this was more than a chase, more than a fight. It was a test. The frontier had always been dangerous, but this was something older, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous than any outlaw or raider he had faced. Outside, the Guardians were adapting, their movements faster, more precise. Sparks flew as their limbs scraped the cave walls. Jace and Nayeli exchanged a look. They were outmatched in sheer force, but they had one thing the Guardians didn't: cunning, unpredictability, and the seed. The seed will help us, Nayeli said, almost whispering, but only if we listen. It's alive. It can fight with us, or against us. Jace swallowed, the cold spreading into his chest like ice water. He nodded, gripping the seed tightly. Whatever lay ahead, he realized, it would not be a battle of bullets alone. It would be a test of will, trust, and courage. And in the distance the Guardians waited, patient and unyielding, reflecting the twin moons in their polished chrome forms.
Jace looked at Nayeli. Then we fight smart.
Not hard. Nayeli smiled faintly, a rare crack in her grim demeanor. Good. That's the only way. Now, let's see if the seed likes you. The cave trembled again as a pulse from the seed spread outward, red light washing over their faces. The Guardians recoiled slightly, their sensors struggling to adapt. Jace felt the cold in his veins, but alongside it came a warmth, a strange connection to the seed, as if it recognized something in him. For the first time, he understood. This chase, this fight, this frontier nightmare was only just beginning. The twin suns were gone. The night of Dustvale had arrived, and the Apache girl, Jace Rowland, and the seed were all trapped in a storm older than the frontier itself, where survival would demand every ounce of courage, cunning, and trust they could muster. And somewhere in the distance the Guardians waited, patient, intelligent, relentless, and hungry. The night of Dustvale was absolute. Twin moons cast pale light across the jagged plains, turning jagged cliffs and rusted starship skeletons into eerie silhouettes. Inside the hidden cave, Jace Rowland's pulse raced. The seed sat on the stone floor, glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat only he could feel. The cold that had brought into his veins earlier lingered, a creeping frost that refused to leave, yet there was now a warmth underneath, a strange alien connection that both unsettled and fascinated him. Nayeli crouched beside him, her pistol humming softly in the dim light. Her eyes, usually so sharp and unyielding, held a shadow of worry. "They're coming," she whispered, "and they've learned faster than I thought. The Guardians are smart. They adapt to tactics." Jace swallowed hard. "We've got the cave. How much smarter can they get?" "They learn," Nayeli said simply, her voice grim. "Everything we do, every move we make, they notice. They'll adapt and come at us differently. They don't just hunt. They strategize." Jace felt the weight of her words. He had faced raiders, rogue machines, even the dust storms that shredded whole settlements, but nothing like this. These Guardians were more than machines. They were hunters, patient, intelligent, and utterly relentless. A deep metallic scrape echoed from outside. Jace froze. The Guardians were testing the cave now, probing, trying to find a weak point. Sparks flickered along the jagged rock where their limbs struck, and he could feel the vibrations in his chest. He glanced at the seed. Its pulse was faster now, reacting to the Guardian's proximity. Almost alive, almost aware. "What is it really?" Jace asked, voice low. "Why is it alive?" She'd avoided this conversation until now. "The seed," she said slowly, was created by the ancients. Not humans, not machines, something older. They made it to preserve life, to guide life, and to destroy when necessary. It's sentient. It chooses who can wield it and who it rejects, and it doesn't forgive mistakes. Jace stared. You're telling me I might not survive holding it? Instead, she shifted her stance, eyes scanning the cave entrance. Maybe. That's why it tests you. That cold you feel, it's the seed touching you, judging you. It doesn't just choose, it examines, probes, decides if you're strong enough, clever enough, or if you'll fail and be consumed. The word echoed like a warning, chilling him more than the cold that ran through his veins. And yet, despite the fear, he felt a strange pull toward the seed, as if it called to him, whispering secrets he couldn't understand. Outside, the first guardian struck again. The cave walls shivered as a metal limb slammed against stone. Sparks flew, throwing shadows across the cave floor. Jace and Nayeli dived behind a large rock, their breaths shallow. The second guardian followed suit, its polished form moving with terrifying precision. Nayeli fired again, blue energy bolts lancing through the air, but the guardians absorbed most of the impacts. Sparks scattered, but their advance didn't slow. They were relentless. They'll keep coming, Nayeli said, grit in her voice. We have to make them adapt or trap them. Jace's mind raced. He studied the seed, its pulsing now seeming to sync with his own heartbeat. He realized something. It responded not just to proximity, but to intention. Perhaps he could use it. Perhaps he could fight with it. Show me, he said quietly, almost to himself. Teach me to use it. Nayeli's eyes widened. It's too dangerous. You can't control it yet. But Jace wasn't listening. He focused on the seed, letting his mind reach out, trusting that strange connection. The pulse grew stronger under his palms. Light spread, spilling over the cave floor. The air shimmered as energy rippled outward. For the first time, the guardians hesitated. Their limbs slowed, almost recoiling. You did something, Nayeli said, awe in her voice. It responded. Jace felt it now, a strange warmth replacing the frost in his veins. The seed was alive, aware, and it had chosen, for the moment, to cooperate. I think it trusts me, he said. The cave shook as the first guardian slammed its limb again. Sparks rained down. The second guardian moved faster now, shifting strategy, anticipating Nayeli's aim, trying to cut off their escape. But Jace focused, letting the seed pulse outward like a wave. The guardians flinched, metal twisting unnaturally. Energy coursed along the cave walls, and for the first time, Jace realized the seed could fight with him. We can't stay here forever, Nayeli shouted. They'll find a way in. Then we go on the offensive. He gritted his teeth. Holding the seed, he stepped into the center of the cave. Light spilled from it, casting their shadows across the walls like giants. The pulse of energy grew stronger, and for the first time, the guardians faltered. Their movements became awkward, as if the seed's presence disrupted them. Nayeli watched, both fearful and amazed. You're controlling it somehow. I don't know how, Jace admitted. But it listens to me, at least for now. Outside, the guardians hesitated, sensing something they couldn't calculate. Their sensors twitched and flickered. Jace could see sparks along their armor as the seed's energy pressed outward. He felt the cold in his veins fade, replaced by something stronger, almost protective. Then came a realization. The guardians weren't the only danger. The seed itself was unpredictable. Its energy surged, pulsing faster, throwing off their balance, bending metal. Jace realized if he misused it, they wouldn't just die. They could be obliterated. Suddenly, the cave floor shifted. A hidden fissure opened beneath them, and Jace stumbled, barely catching himself. The seed's pulse surged in warning. Nayeli grabbed his arm, steadying him. It's testing you in the cave. Everything here is a trial. Don't panic. Focus. Jace nodded, heart hammering. Focus. He concentrated, letting the seed's pulse flow through him like a rhythm. The fissure sealed as quickly as it opened. Sparks danced across the cave walls. Nayeli's mouth fell open. You did it. You stabilized it. The guardians roared in mechanical frustration outside, pounding on the cave walls. Metal screeched and twisted. They were adapting again, faster than he could imagine. Jace felt the seed pulsing violently, almost like a heartbeat against his chest. It was alive, aware, and fully sentient. And it had chosen him. Nayeli crouched beside him, her eyes scanning the entrance. We can't hold them forever. We need a plan, or a place where they can't reach us. Jace thought quickly. The canyon spires they had passed earlier, jagged, narrow paths with sheer drops. He could lead them there, use the terrain, and with the seed's power, perhaps they could trap or disable the Guardians. "We move," he said, determination in his voice. "Tonight, we fight smart, and we end this chase. Let's go." The two of them bolted, the seed's light guiding their path. Energy pulsed through it as if alive, protecting them, warning them, and amplifying their steps. Outside, the Guardians followed, metal claws scraping, their movements relentless. Sparks flew as they adapted, but Jace felt a strange confidence. The seed was alive, and it was fighting with him. They reached the canyon spires, the jagged cliffs casting long shadows in the moonlight. The Guardians halted at the canyon's entrance, assessing, calculating. Jace felt the seed pulse, as if sensing the terrain, reacting to the environment. He realized its intelligence was vast, alien, and powerful, but he still had to guide it. "Follow my lead," Jace whispered to Nayeli. "We use the cliffs, force them to adapt to us. We'll have the advantage, if we can survive long enough." The Guardians advanced, metal limbs glinting under the moons. Sparks flew where they scraped the canyon walls, but this time Jace felt ready. The seed pulsed violently, almost like a heartbeat echoing his own. He could feel it resonating with the canyon, with the terrain, with the fight ahead. Nayeli glanced at him, her eyes wide. You might just pull this off." Jace tightened his grip on the seed, feeling its strange warmth, its intelligence, its raw power. "Then let's make sure they regret following us." The canyon echoed with the Guardians' approach. Sparks, energy pulses, and metal screeches filled the air. But for the first time, Jace Rowland didn't feel like a man running for survival. He felt like a frontier fighter, wielding something older than humanity, smarter than any machine, and terrifyingly alive. And the chase, the battle, the nightmare of Dustvale was far from over. The canyon of Dustvale yawned before them, a jagged labyrinth of rock and shadow. Jace Rowland and Nayeli moved cautiously, the seed pulsing in Jace's hands like a heartbeat of some alien creature. Every step echoed in the narrow corridors, and the air shimmered with tension, electric and heavy. Somewhere above, the twin moons cast a pale, cold light, illuminating jagged spires and the endless emptiness beyond. The Guardians had followed them into the canyon, their polished metal bodies reflecting the moonlight, moving with terrifying precision. Sparks scattered along the canyon walls where their limbs scraped against rock. They were relentless. They adapted faster than any machine Jace had ever seen. And now, in this confined space, they would force him and Nayeli into a fight with no room to run. Jace swallowed hard, feeling the cold pulse in his veins from the seed. But this time it was accompanied by a strange warmth, almost protective, almost alive. He realized he could feel its intelligence, a rhythm in sync with his own heartbeat, urging him, guiding him. "We have to lure them into the center," Jace whispered, voice low, tense. "If we can control the space, maybe the seed can trap them." Nayeli nodded. Her pistol hummed softly in her hand, blue energy glowing faintly. "The canyon narrows in a few hundred meters. That's where we make our stand." They ran forward, twisting through the jagged paths, shadows stretching unnaturally with every pulse of the seed. The Guardians followed, calculating, adapting. Sparks flew as metal scraped stone, and the air vibrated with the hum of their engines. Jace's heart pounded. He knew he was the only human alive who could control the seed, at least for now. As they reached a narrow plateau, Jace stopped and pressed the seed to the ground. It pulsed violently, sending waves of energy through the canyon. The Guardians halted at the edges, sensing the change. Their sensors flickered. Sparks danced across their polished surfaces. "They feel it," Nayeli whispered, eyes wide. "The seed. It's asserting itself." Jace concentrated. He let the seed's pulse flow through him, reaching out with intention. The energy expanded, shimmering red light washing over the plateau, bending shadows, vibrating the rock. The Guardians advanced cautiously now, their movements slower, measured, almost wary. Suddenly, one of the Guardians lunged, spinning its metal claws. Jace reacted instinctively, channeling the seed's pulse. Energy surged outward like a wave, slamming into the Guardian. Sparks flew, limbs twisted, and it skidded across the rock, scraping against the canyon walls. It rose again immediately, but now with hesitation, recalculating. "You can do this," Nayeli said, her voice strong, firing energy bolts at the other Guardian to keep it distracted. "Let the seed fight with you, not for you." He focused, letting the seed's pulse merge with his intention. A wave of crimson energy spread outward, bending the canyon walls slightly, throwing shadows like living fingers against the Guardians. Their sensors flickered violently. The energy pushed them back. Sparks flew as metal scraped against rock. For the first time, Jace realized the seed wasn't just reacting, it was strategizing, defending, anticipating. The Guardians lunged again, faster this time. Jace felt a sharp, cold spike through his chest. But with focus, he pushed back. Crimson waves pulsed outward in rhythm with his heartbeat, striking the machines, forcing them into missteps. The canyon echoed with the sounds of metal and energy, a strange symphony of life and machine in combat. Nayeli moved beside him, firing continuously, distracting the Guardians. She leapt over a jagged rock, landing with grace despite the chaos. "They're adapting again! Hurry!" she shouted. Jace felt the seed's pulse intensify, almost like a roar. He realized it was giving him power, but also testing him. It was alive, sentient, and dangerous. Misuse it, and they could all be obliterated. He closed his eyes briefly, centering himself, letting the rhythm of the seed flow through him. Then he moved deliberately. The first Guardian lunged directly at him, spinning claws raised. Jace extended his hands, and the seed pulsed violently. Crimson energy spread, and, for a moment, time seemed to slow. The Guardian's limbs bent and twisted unnaturally, caught in a force they couldn't calculate. Sparks flew, metal screeched, and the canyon walls trembled. The second Guardian circled, trying to flank them. Jace shifted the seed's pulse, sending a wave toward it. The machine's movement faltered. It recoiled as if sensing an invisible wall. Jace could feel the seed communicating, warning him, guiding him, lending strength. He realized it trusted him, but only if he remained calm, focused, and clever. Nayeli fired her pistol with precision, striking the second Guardian in its sensor array. Sparks erupted. It paused, calculating. Then Jace unleashed another pulse from the seed, synchronized with Nayeli's shots. Energy crackled, bouncing along the canyon walls. The Guardians faltered, staggered, and for the first time, Jace felt a thrill of hope. "They can't adapt fast enough," Nayeli said, eyes wide. "You're doing it." But Jace knew the fight wasn't over. The Guardians had patience. They could learn, adapt, and counter. One mistake, one loss of focus, and they could be crushed instantly. He tightened his grip on the seed, feeling its warmth in contrast to the cold that still lingered in his veins. The pulse was stronger than ever. He could almost hear it whisper, "Decide, act, survive." A sudden rumble shook the canyon. Dust and small rocks fell from above. The Guardians had recalculated, adapting to his attacks. One lunged from a higher ledge, faster, stronger. Sparks flew as Jace blocked instinctively, channeling the seed's pulse into a shield-like wave. The Guardian hit the energy wall, recoiling, but the force sent Jace stumbling backward. Nayeli grabbed his arm. "Keep control. Don't let it overwhelm you." Jace nodded. His mind cleared. He let the seed's rhythm guide him. Pulse by pulse, wave by wave, he created a barrier, a lattice of energy that bent the canyon's geometry around them. The Guardians tried to advance, but each movement was met with force, energy bending and twisting the space itself. "They're trapped!" Nayeli shouted, awe and relief in her voice. "They can't reach us." Jace felt a strange pride, but it was tempered by awareness. The seed was powerful, but it wasn't tame. It demanded respect. One wrong move, one lapse in control, and it could turn on him as easily as it defended. He kept breathing, letting the pulse flow, steady, rhythmic, alive. The Guardians struggled, metal limbs contorting, sparks flying. The canyon echoed with their frustration, their mechanical attempts to escape. Jace realized they weren't just machines, they were intelligent, adaptable hunters. But the seed, alive and sentient, was now the predator. Nayeli moved beside him, eyes scanning the trapped Guardians. "You've done it," she said softly, "but they're still alive." "Don't celebrate yet." Jace nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility. The seed pulsed, calm now, almost content, but aware. It had been a test, and he had passed, barely. But he knew the frontier was never forgiving. There would always be new dangers, new threats. The Guardians struggled, sparks and smoke rising. The canyon was their cage now, twisted and reshaped by the seed's power. Jace felt the pulse in his chest, a rhythm that had become part of him.
You looked at Nayeli.
"We did it, for now." She smiled faintly, relief washing over her features. "For now," she echoed. "The frontier is still wild. But tonight, we survived. and the seed, it has chosen its guardians. Jace looked down at the seed. Its crimson light pulsed slowly, steadily, alive, aware, and infinitely older than anything he had ever known. He realized then that their journey had only just begun. The frontier was vast, full of dangers, and there were secrets buried deeper than the Dustvale Plains could hide. But for now, they had survived. They had learned to trust each other, to wield the power of the seed, and to stand against predators older than humanity. Outside, the twin moons reflected off the canyon walls, illuminating jagged spires and endless sky. The Guardians were trapped for the moment, metal and machine frozen by energy beyond their calculation. Jace and Naeli stood together, battered but unbroken, and somewhere in the distance the plains of Dustvale whispered their warnings, silent and eternal. The frontier was wild, dangerous, and alive, and so were they. Jace Rowland looked at Naeli, his partner, his ally, the Apache girl who had survived the impossible. He felt a strange connection to the seed, its pulse a rhythm in sync with his own heart. The chase, the danger, the frontier, it would continue. But they were ready, and for the first time Jace felt hope in the Dustvale.